Hey, it's Hammer Time. On this special episode of Hammer Time, we have Marco Lopez, the CEO and the head of Intermestic. But before we begin, I just learned something new. Intermestic, you've created a new word that's now in the dictionary?
It's now in the dictionary, so it's the intersection between international and domestic. And so since we're always thinking about Mexico as an international place, which is where most of my engagement happens between the US and Mexico, I thought, it's actually domestic. A lot of the issues that we deal with are domestic issues. If you grew up or live on the border, you don't see Mexico as a foreign country or as a foreign destination. So anyways, that's the intersection there.
As this guy who comes from another country, New York, I would agree. Sonora
Right.
and Arizona to me are New York and Connecticut.
Right.
We are connected in every single way.
Exactly.
I want to go in the Wayback Machine. You have been out of elected office for decades. You were the boy mayor of Nogales,
Right.
Arizona. I think the youngest mayor. I mean, it was like
22, right?
Almost right after bar mitzvah age. You're mayor
Right.
of a very important city. Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about how that happened?
Sure. So before even that, Glenn, I was 15 in around 1993, 94. And Congressman Pastor had been elected to Congress. I think he was then serving his second term. And he had an opportunity to appoint a congressional page. At that time, before all the controversy in the late 90s with congressional pages, so I thought, I want to be a congressional page. Wow. And the requirement is you have to be 16 years old and junior in high school. So I applied, and that was the first political fundraiser I ever went to. Congressman Pastor had a carne asada fundraiser in Rio Rico, Arizona. And so I convinced my parents to take me so that I could hand deliver the application to him. Long story short, I got appointed and selected and appointed to be a congressional page for Congressman Pastor.
In Washington, D.C.
Washington, D.C., and you go to school at the attic of the Library of Congress. There's a junior high school curriculum, and it's 65 congressional pages. And you go to school there essentially for a year. And you work in Congress. It's like a cheap way of getting young kids to work in Congress, right? But it was an interesting time because if you remember, this is when the 103rd to the 104th Congress, when Newt Gingrich and his contract with America took over the House of Representatives. So us pages that went as Democrats were kicked out, and we were replaced by Republican pages. So I came home 6 months in, so I just did one semester instead of the full year, and then that bug never leaves you. That political bug never leaves you. And so I came back, I graduated from high school in Nogales, went to the U of A, and I thought, what am I gonna do? Like, what is my plan? And I knew I wanted to be in politics, so I thought, student region is opening up. And I applied to be a student region. I was a finalist, and Governor Hall luckily did not appoint me. She didn't appoint me, and so therefore I then ran for mayor. And then we became good friends. I was the youngest mayor. I was 22. She was the governor. She appointed me to the Arizona-Mexico Commission, and that's really how my engagement with the state started along the border.
But coming from a state like New York and coming here, it's one of the things that has enriched me and has been a very pleasant surprise is just how deep those connections are between Arizona and Sonora. It's beyond economy, it's beyond education. Speaking of Nogales, it's literally family on both sides of the border. And I can't put my finger on exactly what it is, but I will say, I think the best people somehow come from Nogales on both sides. There's a richness there.
Well, I have to agree that the best people do come from Nogales.
It's really great people but have this really special international perspective.
We don't see ourselves, whether you're a border community or a border state, we don't see ourselves and our neighbors as foreign. They're our friends, they're our family, or they're our friends, they're our business partners. So it's not, we don't feel that sense of uncertainty, I guess, is what it is. The further you get from the border, though, that's kind of on the uncertainty meter, the level goes up. So if you're in the middle of the country and all you read or all you see in the media is a negative story about Mexico or what's happening in southern Mexico or in Latin America generally or even in Venezuela, you tie that up and you don't understand any of how the world works. You tie all of that together, and that's the perception you have. But if you're here, you know people from Hermosillo or you from Sonora or from any other state, and you kind of relate.
When I go to Sonora, I always ask anyone I meet, and at this point, hundreds, if not more, people. Yeah. Every single person has a connection to Arizona. Right. They've studied here, they've gone to school here, they have a sister here, you name it. Right. And it's that deep a connection. You think about our tourism economy, it would collapse. It would go kaboom without the good relationship that we have with Sonora.
Correct. And they cheer for the same teams we cheer for. You know, they're fans of the Diamondbacks or the Suns or the Cardinals or the Coyotes. Coyotes, I don't know so much if our friends in Sonora follow hockey, but I don't think that's a team issue. It's more of a sport generally issue.
Talking about trade, every week you write a best-in-class email. I love reading it about the latest and greatest on what's going on with not just the economy in Mexico, but you've written a lot about the new trade agreement. It's called 3 different things depending on which country you are in North America. Here it's USMCA.
Correct.
Would love your general thoughts about that agreement.
Yeah, so look, I think it's basically a refresh of NAFTA agreement that we currently have, with some added fine-tuning. I mean, this was originally written about 25 years ago. So obviously, you know, you need to take it into the shop and get it modernized. And so with some of the technology advancements, some of the intellectual property advancements, some of the automotive advancements, I think it's important that all of that gets included. The problem now is that it's caught in a political back and forth. And it's also, the timing of it has been precarious because we've had elections in the US and then we had elections in Mexico. And so we're dealing with that dynamic too. And unfortunately for Mexico, the president is very focused on looking inward, on figuring out how he can fix some of the issues that he was handed from one administration to his. And that has required most of his attention to be focused on the inner dealings of the country. That's one drawback. The other drawback is that he really isn't someone who has traveled in the US or has kind of learned and studied about the closeness and how intertwined the US and the Mexican economy are. And that's a problem because we know that in order to help stabilize the Mexican economy and for him to be able to achieve the priorities that he wants to achieve, he's got to continue to find ways to strengthen the trade relationship between Mexico and the US. But right now, in the first 85, 90 days of his administration, he's been focused so much on his inner dealings of his government and trying to figure out how that all works. So my prediction is midsummer when things are going to start moving. But both Canada and Mexico are now saying, okay, well, now let's see what happens in the US because Congress has now changed hands. Yeah. Let's see what Speaker Pelosi and her caucus does to move USMCA along. So Mexico and Canada are just taking a wait and see, kind of looking to follow the lead.
Final question. You've been a strong proponent of Skybridge, Arizona. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about why this is so unique and so important to Arizona?
Well, I think it's to Arizona and to the Southwest. What was approved in 2010 by Congress, both in the U.S. and in Mexico, after Customs and Border Protection was seeking to have officers armed in Mexico. Mexico finally, after 20 years of trying, finally said yes, but at some point we want to do the same in the U.S. That had never been executed. We had never had a Mexican customs officer inside the territory of the United States clearing cargo. So we said, let's do this the friendly way. You know, we don't need them to come and inspect drugs or bad things. Why don't we have them do good things, right? Like cargo, yes, produce, commerce between here and Mexico. And so that's how Skybridge was born. We understood that we had that little provision in Congress that had never been executed. There had been a pilot program in Laredo that had been attempted, but it was on the border. So we said, no, let's bring this inside the country. And Mesa, great leadership over there, as you know, Mayor Giles, Councilman Luna and everyone else there, great people, were in the middle of doing an RFP for 360 acres, and we said, why don't we do something different? Let's not do this as a real estate development. Let's do this as an international commerce trade hub that can help us recruit other companies to the region, that can help us recruit investment and jobs to Arizona and to the Southwest. And so that's how Skybridge was born. And so today, if you're going to send a package to Mexico, you can do it in one stop, one inspection in Mesa instead of about 5 stops and 5 inspections in Mexico. So
only place in the United States.
only place in the U.S. today. And more importantly, I think that's going to be the case for at least another 5-6 years, Glenn, because it takes a lot of work to get 2 countries to agree to do anything. But it's an example out there because of the good leadership at Customs and Border Protection. So Arizona is like a leader in innovation as well. In processes, sometimes we think that bureaucrats, they show up to work and just push paper along. But in this case, I think we had the opportunity of folks who recognized, let's do something different that can attract and help us compete better in today's environment. How can you solve a problem in a different manner that can help strengthen our economy, attract jobs, and make us more competitive?
Marco Lopez, thank you for what you've done. Thank you for what you continue to do. And I really believe the best is yet to come.
I agree. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it, Glenn.
Thank you.